The Apache warrior paid for freedom with everything, and fate had no mercy. In the vast lands of the American Southwest, where the mountains kissed the sky and the desert stretched endlessly, the Apache people lived freely. Among them was a young warrior named Tayanita. From a very early age, Tayanita felt a deep connection to the land. The wind seemed to speak to him, the river's gentle flow was a teacher, and the stars above guided his dreams. He grew up in a small village, surrounded by people who valued courage, wisdom, and the bonds of family above all else. Tayanita's family was known in the tribe for their bravery and strong spirits. His father, a respected warrior, taught him the ways of hunting and tracking. From him, Tayanita learned how to move silently through the forest, how to read the signs of animals, and how to survive in a world that could be both beautiful and cruel. His mother, gentle yet strong, taught him the stories of their ancestors, the great warriors who had fought to protect their people, and the sacred lands that held their history. These stories were not just tales, they were lessons filled with courage, honor, and the knowledge that freedom was a treasure worth protecting. As a child, Tayanita spent hours exploring the mountains with his friends. They ran along rocky paths, climbed high cliffs, and hid in the shade of tall trees, imagining themselves as brave warriors defending their village. But Tayanita was different from the others. While his friends played, he often sat quietly, observing the world around him. He noticed the way the wind rustled through the trees, the patterns left by animals on the ground, and the way the sunlight danced on the water. He felt a responsibility growing inside him, a sense that one day he would have to protect not just his family, but his people and their way of life. The tribe lived according to traditions that had been passed down for generations. Every action, every choice had meaning. Before a hunt, the hunters would pray to the spirits for guidance. Before making a journey, the families would ask for protection. Tayanita learned that life was not just about survival, it was about respect for the land, for others, and for oneself. His grandfather often reminded him, "A warrior is strong, but a wise warrior is stronger. Strength without wisdom is like a river without water, it cannot flow." Tayanita carried these words in his heart, understanding that being a true warrior required more than just bravery in battle. As Tayanita grew older, he began to take on more responsibilities. He would accompany his father on hunting trips, learning not only how to track and trap animals, but also how to use every part of the animal respectfully. Nothing was wasted. Every skill he learned connected him more deeply to the land and the balance of life. His mother taught him how to prepare the food, craft clothing from animal hides, and make medicine from the plants around them. These lessons were essential, for they taught him patience, care, and the value of knowledge. Despite the peace of their lives, Tayanita and his people were always aware of the dangers that lurked beyond their lands. Settlers and soldiers from distant territories were slowly moving into the Southwest, seeking land and wealth. The Apache knew that their freedom was fragile and that protecting it would require courage and unity. Tayanita listened carefully to the elders' stories of previous battles, learning that freedom was not simply given, it was earned and defended, sometimes with great sacrifice. Even as a boy, he felt a sense of duty growing within him, a promise that he would do everything possible to protect his people and their way of life. The village itself was a place of warmth and community. Children played near the river while elders shared wisdom in the shade of tall trees. Fires burned in the evening, where families gathered to cook, tell stories, and sing songs that celebrated their culture. Tayanita loved these moments, feeling the strength of the tribe in every laugh, every shared meal, and every story told under the stars. These simple, beautiful moments made him understand why freedom was so precious. It was the freedom to live, laugh, learn, and love without fear. Tayanita's skills as a young warrior began to emerge naturally. He was fast, quiet, and thoughtful. When the hunters returned with news of dangerous animals or signs of strangers approaching, he was always the first to understand what needed to be done. The elders noticed his keen mind and calm courage, often saying that he had the spirit of a great warrior. But Tayanita never let pride take over. He respected every teacher, every elder, and every member of the tribe, knowing that true strength came not from boasting but from humility and service. One day, as Tayanita explored a remote part of the mountains, he found an eagle perched high on a cliff. The eagle looked at him with sharp, intelligent eyes, as if recognizing the courage and determination within him. Tayanita felt a strange connection, as though the eagle was a messenger, a symbol of the freedom he longed to protect. From that day, he would often watch the eagles soaring high above the mountains, reminding himself that freedom was not just a right but a responsibility, a gift that had to be defended with wisdom, courage, and sacrifice. Life in the village was peaceful, but Tayanita knew that this peace could not last forever. The world outside was changing, and with it came new challenges. But instead of fear, Tayanita felt determination. Every day he trained, learned, and observed. Every day he prepared himself for the time when he might have to protect not just his family, but his entire people. The lessons from his parents, the stories from his elders, and the whispers of the land became a guide. He understood that a true warrior fought not for glory, but for the lives and freedom of those who could not defend themselves. Even in his youth, Tayanita began to inspire others. The children followed him on small journeys through the mountains, learning from his patience and observation. The adults respected his careful attention to detail, his readiness to help, and his unwavering courage. Slowly, Tayanita's presence became a symbol of hope for the tribe, a reminder that even in uncertain times, there were those who would rise to protect their people and their freedom. As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, Tayanita often sat quietly on a hill, looking over the village. He thought of the stories of the past, of the warriors who had fought before him, and of the life he had yet to live. He understood that freedom was not a simple thing. It was fragile, precious, and worth every effort to protect. And deep in his heart, he made a promise. No matter what dangers lay ahead, he would fight for his people, his land, and the way of life that had been passed down through generations. The young warrior's journey had only begun, but even now, the spark of greatness shone brightly in his heart. Tayanita knew that the road ahead would be full of challenges, tests of courage, and moments where he would be forced to make hard choices. But he also knew that his love for his people and his respect for the land would guide him. And in that moment, beneath the endless sky, he felt the power of freedom, a power worth protecting with everything he had, even if fate itself would one day test him to the limits. The peaceful life of Tayanita and his tribe was slowly changing. The winds that once carried only whispers of the mountains now brought the distant sounds of strangers moving closer to their lands. These strangers were settlers and soldiers who wanted to claim the land, unaware, or uncaring, of the people who had lived there for generations. The Apache knew that their freedom, the life they had always known, was under threat. Tayanita, now a young adult, had grown stronger, wiser, and more skilled in the ways of a warrior. His mind was sharp, his eyes keen, and his instincts even sharper. The elders of the tribe began to rely on him not only for his bravery, but also for his careful thinking. He was often chosen to lead small hunting or scouting parties, and even in these roles, he taught the younger members of the tribe how to move quietly, track animals, and respect the land. But now, his skills would be tested in a far more dangerous way than hunting or climbing mountains. One morning, the scouts returned with troubling news. They had seen groups of soldiers moving through the valleys, armed and determined, destroying small villages along their path. Tayanita's father gathered the elders, and they spoke quietly about the threat. The young warrior listened closely, absorbing every word. He knew that protecting their people would require more than courage. It would require strategy, teamwork, and sacrifice. The Apache village began preparing for what they knew would come. Families reinforced their homes, children were taught to stay hidden during times of danger, and the hunters practiced their skills in secret. Tayanita worked tirelessly, organizing patrols, teaching the young warriors, and planning ways to protect the elders and children. He moved with quiet determination, aware that the survival of his tribe depended on their unity and careful action. Despite the preparations, the inevitable confrontation came sooner than anyone expected. One early morning, the sound of hoofbeats and shouting broke the quiet of the village. Soldiers, armed and determined, had arrived. Their eyes showed no understanding of the lives they were about to disrupt. The village was thrown into chaos. Mothers gathered their children, elders whispered prayers, and warriors, including Tayanita, readied themselves to defend their home. Tayanita's heart pounded as he moved through the village, helping people take cover and guiding them to safety. He was not afraid, but he felt the weight of responsibility pressing on his shoulders. Every decision he made could mean life or death for someone he cared about. The young warrior led a small group of men to the edges of the village, using the natural landscape to their advantage. They hid behind rocks, moved silently through the brush, and waited for the right moment to act. The battle that followed was fierce but short. The soldiers were strong in numbers, but the Apache knew the land far better. Tayanita used his knowledge of the terrain to outmaneuver the attackers, creating distractions and leading the soldiers away from the villagers. His leadership inspired the warriors around him. Even the youngest and least experienced fighters followed his careful commands. Yet, despite their courage, the villagers could not entirely repel the invaders. The soldiers were relentless, and eventually Tayanita was faced with a terrible choice. He could continue fighting, risking the lives of his people, or he could sacrifice himself to give them a chance to escape. Without hesitation, he chose the latter. He drew the attention of the soldiers, moving boldly in full view, allowing the villagers to flee through secret paths known only to the Apache. Captured by the soldiers, Tayanita faced a different kind of battle. He was bound, taken from the land he loved, and placed in harsh conditions. The soldiers tried to intimidate him to break his spirit, but Tayanita remained steadfast. He refused to reveal the locations of his people or the secret routes of the land. Even in captivity, he thought only of his tribe, their safety, and their freedom. Every moment of pain he endured was worth it if it meant that his people could live free. Life in captivity was difficult. The soldiers were strict, and Tayanita was constantly watched. He was given only enough food to survive, and every movement was restricted. Yet in his heart, he remained free. He observed his surroundings, noting every detail, every weakness, and every opportunity. He remembered the teachings of his father. A warrior is never truly trapped if his mind and spirit are strong. Tayanita held onto this belief, using it to keep hope alive. During his time in captivity, Tayanita also met others who had been taken from their homes. Some were frightened, some angry, and some hopeless. The young warrior shared what he had learned about courage and resilience. He reminded them of the strength that comes from unity and the importance of holding onto one's spirit. Slowly, he became a symbol of hope among the captives. Even in the darkest moments, his calm courage inspired others to endure. But Tayanita never forgot his true goal, to return to his people. Every night, he would plan and imagine the escape. He studied the guards' routines, the layout of the holding area, and the surrounding landscape. He thought of the mountains, the rivers, and the forests that had been his playground and his sanctuary. Freedom was no longer just a dream. It was a mission that required patience, strategy, and the willingness to risk everything. Months passed, and Tayanita's opportunity finally came. One stormy night, When the guards were distracted and the rain masked the sounds of movement, he made his move. He slipped quietly through the camp, using every skill he had learned as a tracker and warrior. His heart raced, but his mind remained focused. He moved silently through the wet brush, avoiding the soldiers, torches, and patrols. Every step brought him closer to freedom, and every step tested his endurance, his patience, and his courage. The journey back to his land was long and perilous. Tayanita faced hunger, fatigue, and the constant threat of being caught. He slept only when necessary, and he moved only when the path was safest. Despite the hardships, he never wavered. The thought of reuniting with his tribe, of seeing the faces of his people safe and free, drove him forward. Along the way, he also saw the suffering caused by the conflict, the burned villages, the frightened families, and the scars left on the land. These sights strengthened his resolve, reminding him why he could not fail. Finally, after days of careful travel and countless moments of near capture, Tayanita approached the familiar mountains that marked the edge of his people's lands. The sight of the cliffs, the rivers, and the forests filled him with a mixture of relief and sorrow. So much had changed, yet the land remained, and with it, the hope that his people had survived. He moved cautiously, aware that danger might still linger, but his spirit soared. Freedom was close, but it came at a price he had already begun to pay. When Tayanita finally reunited with his tribe, he was both celebrated and mourned. His bravery and cunning had saved the lives of many, but the cost of the conflict was visible everywhere: homes destroyed, elders lost, and children who had seen too much. Tayanita embraced his people, feeling their gratitude and sorrow. He knew that their freedom, their way of life, had been preserved, but the journey ahead would still be difficult. The battles were not yet over, and the young warrior understood that protecting freedom required constant vigilance, sacrifice, and courage. In the weeks that followed, Tayanita helped his tribe rebuild. He guided them in reclaiming their homes, gathering food, and restoring the safety of their lands. He trained the young warriors, passing on every skill and lesson he had learned during captivity and escape. He reminded them of the importance of unity, of the strength that comes from courage and wisdom, and of the responsibility they had to protect each other and their heritage. Though the scars of conflict remained, the spirit of the tribe endured. And through it all, Tayanita remained a symbol of hope, courage, and resilience. He had faced the cruelty of the outside world, endured imprisonment, and risked his life to save his people. Yet even in the midst of these trials, he never lost sight of the most important truth: freedom is precious, fragile, and worth fighting for with everything one has. Tayanita knew that more challenges would come. Soldiers and settlers would continue to threaten their lands, and the balance of life would always be tested. But he also knew that courage, wisdom, and unity could overcome even the greatest obstacles. And so, with the mountains behind him and the open sky above, he prepared himself for the battles yet to come, understanding that the path of a warrior was not measured by victories alone, but by the sacrifices made to protect what truly mattered. After escaping captivity, Tayanita's journey back to his people's lands began in earnest. The mountains and deserts stretched endlessly before him, a vast expanse of challenges and dangers. Every step was a test of his endurance, skill, and determination. His body was weak from hunger and fatigue, but his spirit burned brighter than ever. He carried with him the hope of returning to his tribe, the faces of his loved ones, and the memory of their laughter and warmth. These thoughts kept him moving when the pain became almost unbearable. The first few days were the hardest. Tayanita had to rely on his knowledge of the land to survive. He hunted small animals when he could, drank from hidden streams, and slept only in the safest places he could find. Every sound in the wilderness made him alert. Every shadow could hide danger. Soldiers or strangers could still be searching for him, and even a single mistake could end everything. Yet he moved with quiet precision, his senses honed from years of training and experience. He knew that freedom was fragile, and he could not allow it to slip away, not now. Along the way, Tayanita encountered the harsh reality of the world beyond his village. He saw burned homes, abandoned villages, and people who had lost everything to conflict. Children wandered alone, their eyes filled with fear and confusion. Families huddled together, hiding from soldiers or settlers who threatened their safety. Each scene tore at his heart, reminding him why he had chosen this dangerous path. He realized that the struggle for freedom was not just his own. It belonged to all those who had been displaced, all those who had lost their homes, and all those whose lives had been turned upside down. Despite the exhaustion and danger, Tayanita pressed on. His journey was not only physical but also mental. He had to remain calm, make careful decisions, and avoid the natural traps and obstacles of the wilderness. He crossed rivers swollen by rain, climbed steep cliffs, and navigated dense forests. Each step required skill, patience, and courage. He often thought of his father's lessons about patience and observation, his mother's teachings about respect and care, and the stories of ancestors who had faced great challenges. These memories were his guide, reminding him that he was not alone, even in the darkest moments. During his journey, Tayanita also faced moments of loneliness and fear. Nights were cold and silent, and sometimes he doubted whether he would reach his people. Yet he always found a way to push forward. He sang quietly to himself, recalling the songs and stories of his tribe. These songs reminded him of the love, the community, and the strength that awaited him. They reminded him of the reason he had risked everything: the freedom of his people, the safety of his family, and the land that had shaped his life. At one point, Tayanita encountered a dangerous canyon filled with loose rocks and treacherous paths. He had to cross it carefully, testing each step before trusting the ground beneath him. The wind howled, threatening to unbalance him, and the cliffs seemed impossibly steep. But Tayanita remembered the lessons of the mountains, the ways to use balance, observation, and calmness to overcome danger. Slowly, step by step, he made his way across, feeling both relief and pride when he finally reached solid ground. This moment reminded him that perseverance and courage were as important as physical strength in the fight for freedom. Along his path, Tayanita also encountered other survivors, people who had fled from soldiers or settlers. He shared food, water, and guidance with them, helping them find safety. In return, they gave him news of the lands ahead, shared knowledge of hidden paths, and offered encouragement. These brief connections reminded Tayanita that even in the midst of hardship, people could help each other, and that freedom was not only a personal goal but a shared responsibility. Every life he helped preserve strengthened his resolve to reach his tribe and protect the lands they loved. The nights were especially challenging. Alone in the wilderness, Tayanita often felt the weight of fear pressing down on him. The darkness was thick, and the sounds of animals and the wind made it difficult to sleep. But he knew that rest was necessary to continue. He found hidden caves or dense thickets to protect himself, staying alert to any signs of danger. During these quiet nights, he reflected on his journey so far, the sacrifices he had already made, and the challenges yet to come. Each thought reminded him that freedom was worth every struggle, every risk, and every moment of pain. As he drew closer to his homeland, Tayanita faced his greatest trial. Soldiers had begun patrolling the area more intensely, aware of the possibility that captives like him might try to escape. Every valley, every river crossing, and every forest path became a potential trap. Tayanita had to rely on every lesson he had ever learned, to move silently, to observe carefully, and to anticipate the movements of his pursuers. He used the terrain to his advantage, climbing high ridges to see far ahead and finding hidden routes that would allow him to pass unnoticed. His skill and patience were tested as never before. During this critical stage of his journey, Tayanita also faced extreme hunger. The food he could find was scarce, and he had to make difficult choices about what to eat and what to leave. He survived on small animals, berries, and roots, always careful not to overstep his limits. At times, the physical strain was almost unbearable. His body ached, his muscles were sore, and his energy was nearly gone. But each time he felt weakness, he reminded himself of the faces of his tribe, the children, the elders, and the land that needed him. This thought gave him the strength to continue, step after painful step. Tayanita's mind also became a weapon during his journey. He set small traps to mislead any pursuers, left false tracks in the sand, and moved strategically to avoid being detected. Every decision required careful thought, quick judgment, and calm nerves. He remembered the words of the elders. A warrior fights not only with his hands but with his mind and heart. These words guided him, helping him stay ahead of danger while preserving his strength for what lay ahead. Finally, after days of tireless travel, Tayanita reached the edges of his homeland. The mountains rose in familiar shapes, the rivers flowed in their usual patterns, and the forests welcomed him back with their quiet embrace. The sight of his village in the distance filled him with a mixture of relief, joy, and sorrow. Relief that he had survived, joy at being near his people, and sorrow for all that had been lost during his absence. His journey had changed him, tested him, and shown him the true cost of freedom. Reuniting with the tribe was a moment of intense emotion. Mothers and fathers, children and elders, all gathered to see Tayanita, the young warrior who had risked everything to return. They celebrated his courage and resourcefulness, but they also mourned the losses that the conflict had brought. Tayanita embraced his family, his heart heavy with the knowledge of the sacrifices he had already made and those he might still have to face. Yet, even in the midst of sorrow, he felt hope. The tribe had survived, and he had returned to guide them through the challenges ahead. Tayanita immediately began helping the tribe rebuild. He organized patrols to watch for danger, taught the young warriors new strategies, and helped repair homes and shelters. He also reminded the people of the importance of unity and courage. He shared stories of his journey, not to boast, but to teach lessons about endurance, observation, and hope. The tribe listened carefully, inspired by his bravery and determination. They understood that freedom was not a gift, but a responsibility that required sacrifice, courage, and wisdom. Even as he worked to restore the village, Tayanita knew that danger was not over. Soldiers and settlers would continue to encroach on their lands, and his people would have to remain vigilant. But he also knew that he had the strength, knowledge, and determination to protect them. He had faced capture, hunger, exhaustion, and fear, and had survived. He had learned that true courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to act in spite of it. This lesson would guide him and his tribe in the battles yet to come. Tayanita's journey back to his homeland was not only a physical test but a spiritual one. He had faced the harshness of the world and emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined. He understood the value of life, the importance of family and community, and the true meaning of freedom. Every hardship, every danger, and every sacrifice had brought him closer to understanding what it truly meant to be a warrior. As he looked over the mountains and valleys of his homeland, Tayanita knew that his journey had changed him forever. He had learned that freedom was precious, fragile, and worth every sacrifice. He had seen the pain and suffering that came with conflict, but he had also seen the strength, courage, and hope that could survive even in the darkest times. And with this knowledge, he prepared himself for the next chapter of his life, the fight not only to survive, but to ensure that his people and their way of life could endure for generations to come. Returning to his people's lands was only the beginning of Tayanita's true struggle. The young warrior knew that while he had survived captivity and navigated the dangers of the wilderness, the fight to protect his tribe was far from over. The scars of the battles that had taken place in his absence were visible everywhere. Homes had been burned, food stores destroyed, and the village itself bore the marks of conflict. Families were grieving the loss of loved ones, and children were frightened by memories of soldiers and strangers who had threatened their safety. Tayanita felt a heavy weight on his shoulders, not just the responsibility of being a warrior, but the burden of guiding his people through the aftermath of war. He immediately began helping to rebuild the village. He organized groups of men and women to repair homes, clear paths, and gather resources. He showed the younger warriors how to create lookouts and prepare defenses in case the danger returned. Every task he undertook was a reminder that freedom was not something one could take for granted. Tayanita's energy seemed endless, driven by a deep sense of purpose and responsibility. Even when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm him, he reminded himself that his people were counting on him. While the village worked to recover, Tayanita also understood that the soldiers and settlers were not finished. Reports came from scouts that groups of outsiders were moving closer to the Apache lands. These were not simple threats. They were forces determined to claim the territory and break the spirit of the people. Tayanita knew that preparation alone would not be enough. He had to face the enemy directly, to protect his tribe from harm, even if it meant putting himself at great risk. The young warrior called together the elders and the leaders of the tribe. They discussed strategies, mapped out safe routes, and planned ways to protect the children and elders if another attack came. Tayanita listened carefully to every suggestion, considering each idea with precision. He understood that in war, every choice mattered and the smallest mistake could cost lives. The elders trusted him, not only because of his bravery but also because of his wisdom and calm decision-making under pressure. Soon, the inevitable confrontation came. A large group of soldiers and settlers entered the valley, aiming to take control of the lands and intimidate the Apache. Tayanita led a group of warriors to meet the threat. They moved silently, using their knowledge of the mountains and forests to outmaneuver the enemy. Rocks, rivers, and dense forests became their allies as they set up traps and carefully planned ambushes. Every step, every decision was critical. The battle that followed was fierce. The soldiers were strong in numbers and well-armed, but Tayanita and his warriors had something they did not: intimate knowledge of the land, patience, and the courage to defend their homes at any cost. The young warrior moved with precision, coordinating attacks and directing his people in ways that minimized casualties. Yet, even with skill and strategy, the battle was costly. Many of Tayanita's closest companions were injured, and some did not survive. Each loss was a painful reminder that freedom was never free. It came with a price that demanded courage, sacrifice, and sometimes heartbreak. During the battle, Tayanita faced moments that tested his resolve in ways he had never imagined. He saw families in danger, children caught in the crossfire, and elders struggling to defend themselves. In one desperate moment, he risked his own life to save a group of children who had been cornered by the soldiers. His heart pounded as he led them through a hidden path, using every ounce of strength and skill to ensure they were safe. The fear in their eyes was mirrored in his own, but he refused to show weakness. He knew that the survival of these children represented the future of the tribe. Even after the battle, the aftermath was grim. The village had survived, but the cost was immense. Tayanita walked through the community, helping those who were wounded, comforting the grieving, and offering guidance on how to recover. He understood that true leadership was not about glory in battle, but about the quiet, steadfast support of one's people. His courage had inspired many, but it had also reminded them of the fragility of life and freedom. As the days passed, Tayanita realized that the enemy would return. The soldiers and settlers were persistent, and the Apache lands were rich and desirable. The young warrior knew that continued vigilance was necessary. He worked tirelessly to strengthen defenses, train new warriors, and ensure that every member of the tribe understood the importance of unity and preparedness. He also encouraged the community to maintain hope, even in the face of ongoing threats. His spirit became a source of strength for the tribe, guiding them through fear and uncertainty. Despite his efforts, Anita faced moments of despair. He had survived captivity, escaped danger, and led his people through battles, yet he could not prevent all suffering. Some families had lost loved ones permanently. Some homes could never be rebuilt. The weight of responsibility pressed on him, and there were nights when he sat quietly, staring at the stars, questioning whether he could continue to carry the burdens of leadership. Yet, in those quiet moments, he also found resolve. He remembered the words of his elders: freedom required sacrifice, and a true warrior's duty was never-ending. Anita also understood that sacrifice was not only physical but emotional. He had to make difficult choices, sometimes deciding who could be saved and who could not. Every decision weighed heavily on him, but he faced each one with courage and thoughtfulness. He knew that the safety and freedom of the many outweighed the fears and desires of the individual. These lessons shaped him, making him not only a skilled warrior but also a wise and compassionate leader. One day, Anita received word that a large group of settlers was advancing from the east, planning to take over more of the Apache lands. The tribe prepared for another confrontation, and Anita led the efforts personally. He studied the terrain, anticipated enemy movements, and created strategies to protect the village while minimizing harm. The young warrior knew that this battle could demand the ultimate sacrifice, yet he did not hesitate. The thought of losing even a single member of his tribe was unbearable, and he was willing to risk everything to ensure their safety. The battle was long and grueling. Anita fought alongside his people, moving with skill, courage, and precision. Every moment demanded focus, bravery, and endurance. The soldiers were relentless, and despite their determination, the Apache fighters held their ground. The young warrior led ambushes, created diversions, and guided families to safe locations. His leadership and bravery were evident to everyone around him, inspiring even the youngest warriors to act with courage and determination. Yet even as victory seemed possible, Anita realized the harsh truth. Freedom always came with a cost. Many lives had been lost, homes had been destroyed, and the land itself bore the scars of conflict. The young warrior understood that the fight was far from over, and that the sacrifices made today would echo for years to come. He accepted the harsh reality that sometimes, despite one's best efforts, fate could be merciless. In the aftermath of the battle, Anita worked tirelessly to heal his people. He helped rebuild homes, cared for the wounded, and comforted those who had lost family members. His presence was a source of hope and resilience. The tribe looked to him not only as a warrior but as a guide, a protector, and a symbol of their enduring spirit. Anita's actions reminded them that even in the face of immense challenges, courage, wisdom, and unity could preserve their way of life. Through these trials, Anita also came to understand the deeper meaning of sacrifice. Freedom was not just the absence of danger, it was the ability to live with dignity, safety, and hope. The price of freedom was measured not only in battles won or lost, but in the lives touched, the courage inspired, and the hope preserved. Every hardship endured, every risk taken, and every moment of fear faced contributed to the survival and resilience of his people. As time passed, the village began to recover. Homes were rebuilt, food supplies were replenished, and the children returned to their daily routines. Yet, Anita knew that vigilance was necessary. The soldiers and settlers would not stop their attempts to claim the land, and the Apache people had to remain strong. The young warrior continued to train new fighters, strengthen defenses, and ensure that every member of the tribe understood the importance of courage, unity, and sacrifice. Through it all, Tayanita remained steadfast. He had faced captivity, hunger, fear, and the constant threat of death. He had risked everything to protect his people and their land. And even as he grieved the losses and endured the pain of difficult choices, he never lost sight of the ultimate goal, the freedom and safety of his tribe. His courage and dedication became a legacy in itself, inspiring future generations to honor the land, respect their people, and face adversity with unwavering strength. Tayanita's story in this chapter of his life was a testament to the harsh realities of freedom. It showed that even the bravest warriors must endure loss, struggle, and heartbreak. Yet, it also showed that hope, courage, and resilience could prevail, guiding a people through even the darkest times. The young warrior's journey had taught him that true freedom was never guaranteed, but it was always worth fighting for, with every ounce of strength, every act of courage, and every sacrifice of the heart. Tayanita had survived captivity, navigated treacherous lands, and led his people through battles that tested every ounce of their courage. Yet, even as the village slowly began to heal, he knew that the ultimate challenge was still ahead. The soldiers and settlers had not given up. Reports came of larger groups moving closer, more determined than ever to claim the lands that had been home to the Apache for generations. Tayanita understood that this next confrontation would demand everything from him, and perhaps even more than he could give. Despite the looming threat, Tayanita remained a pillar of strength for his people. He trained the young warriors tirelessly, sharing every lesson he had learned from his journey, from battles, and from surviving captivity. He taught them not only how to fight but also how to think, to plan, and to act with courage and wisdom. Every skill, every story, and every warning he shared was meant to prepare the next generation for the challenges they would inevitably face. The young warriors looked up to him with admiration, seeing in him a model of bravery and selflessness. Even as he focused on preparing the tribe, Tayanita's thoughts often returned to the families who had suffered loss and hardship. Children who had lost parents, elders who had lost friends, and warriors who had lost comrades were reminders of the harsh cost of freedom. Tayanita comforted them, listened to their fears, and reminded them of their strength. He knew that hope was as powerful a weapon as any arrow or spear. The courage of the people depended not only on strategy and skill, but also on the belief that they could survive and thrive, no matter the challenges. The inevitable confrontation came sooner than expected. A large group of soldiers and settlers entered the valley, armed and ready, determined to take control of the land. Tayanita rallied the warriors and guided the villagers to safe areas, ensuring that the children and elders were protected. The young warrior moved with quiet confidence, knowing every path, every hill, and every hidden route in the valley. His strategy was clear: protect the people at all costs and use the land itself as a shield. The battle that followed was fierce and exhausting. Soldiers advanced with determination, but Tayanita and his warriors used their knowledge of the terrain to their advantage. Rocks, cliffs, and narrow paths became tools to slow the enemy and protect the village. Tayanita moved through the chaos with precision, leading attacks, setting traps, and directing his people to safe locations. Every movement required courage, focus, and careful judgment. He understood that the smallest mistake could have devastating consequences, yet he remained calm, relying on his experience and instincts. During the battle, Tayanita faced moments that tested his heart more than his skill. He saw friends fall in the line of duty, families forced to flee, and young warriors struggle under the weight of fear and responsibility. In one critical moment, a group of soldiers broke through a defensive line and advanced toward the heart of the village. Without hesitation, Tayanita placed himself in their path, using his knowledge and skill to drive them back. His courage inspired the others, giving them the strength to fight even when hope seemed fleeting. Even as he fought tirelessly, Tayanita understood the cruel reality of fate. Freedom, he realized, was never guaranteed. Every battle came with losses, and no amount of courage could prevent all suffering. Yet, he accepted this truth without despair. Instead, he focused on what he could control: the safety of his people, the preservation of their land, and the example he could set for future generations. His actions were guided not by desire for glory, but by love, duty, and the unwavering belief that freedom was worth every sacrifice. As the battle reached its climax, Tayanita faced his most difficult decision. The soldiers had cornered a group of villagers, including children and elders, in a small canyon. There was no time for hesitation. Tayanita knew that to save them, he would have to put himself directly in harm's way, risking everything. Without a second thought, he charged forward, drawing the enemy's attention and giving the villagers a chance to escape. Every step was a struggle, every move a test of strength, courage, and determination. He fought not for himself but for the lives of those who could not defend themselves. The battle was long, and the young warrior was pushed to his limits. He fought with skill and determination, but the odds were overwhelming. Soldiers pressed from all sides, and fatigue threatened to slow him. Yet, Tayanita refused to falter. He reminded himself of the lessons from his parents, the stories of his ancestors, and the faces of the people he had sworn to protect. Each memory strengthened him, giving him the resolve to continue, even when his body ached and his energy was nearly gone. Despite his bravery, Tayanita knew that the cost of freedom was often the ultimate sacrifice. In the final moments of the confrontation, he faced a choice: to retreat and save himself, or to stand firm and ensure the villagers' safety. His heart and mind were resolute. He chose to stand, to fight, and to give everything he had. The enemy advanced, but the young warrior held his ground, a symbol of courage and selflessness for everyone watching. As the battle ended, the villagers were safe, thanks to Tayanita's bravery. Yet the cost was high. Tayanita himself had been severely wounded. He could feel the toll of the struggle, the exhaustion, and the injuries taking their effect. He had given everything to protect his people, and now, in the quiet aftermath, he understood the price he had paid. Yet, he felt no regret. He had fulfilled his duty, preserved the freedom of his tribe, and ensured that their way of life could continue. In the days that followed, Tayanita's legacy became clear. Though his body was weakened, his spirit endured. The tribe looked to him not only as a warrior, but as a guide, protector, and symbol of hope. Children who had watched his courage learned what it meant to fight for what is right. Elders who had witnessed his sacrifices felt pride and gratitude. And the young warriors who had followed his lead carried forward the lessons of bravery, wisdom, and resilience. Even as the immediate danger passed, Tayanita understood that vigilance was necessary. The outside world would continue to challenge the Apache people, and threats would always arise. Yet, he knew that the strength, unity, and courage of the tribe could overcome even the greatest obstacles. The young warrior had given everything to protect their freedom, and in doing so, had ensured that future generations would carry forward the spirit of courage and resilience. Tayanita's life became a story that would be told for generations. The elders shared his deeds with children around the fires at night. They spoke of his bravery in the face of danger, his unwavering dedication to his people, and the sacrifices he made to preserve their way of life. His name became synonymous with courage, honor, and the true meaning of freedom. Even long after the battles ended, his story inspired hope, teaching that true warriors fight not for glory, but for love, duty, and the protection of those who cannot defend themselves. The young warrior's legacy extended beyond the battles he fought. He had taught his people the value of unity, the importance of courage, and the strength that comes from wisdom and careful planning. He had shown that freedom is not simply the absence of oppression, but the ability to live with dignity, hope, and safety. His life became a symbol, a reminder that even in the harshest conditions, the spirit of a determined warrior could guide an entire community through hardship. Tayanita's final days were filled with quiet reflection. He walked through the village, observing the people he had protected, the homes that had been rebuilt, and the children who played freely once again. Though he bore the marks of battle on his body and soul, he felt peace in knowing that his sacrifices had not been in vain. The village was safe, the tribe was strong, and the spirit of the Apache people endured. As he looked toward the mountains and valleys of his homeland, Tayanita understood the truth that had guided him throughout his life. Freedom comes at a cost, and courage is measured not by the absence of fear, but by the willingness to act despite it. He had paid a great price, endured unimaginable hardship, and faced the merciless hand of fate. Yet, he had preserved the freedom of his people, leaving a legacy that would never be forgotten. The story of Tayanita, the young Apache warrior who gave everything for his people, became legend. His bravery, wisdom, and selflessness inspired generations to come. The children who played in the village would hear tales of his courage. The young warriors who trained under him would carry forward his teachings. And even in the quiet moments, when the wind rustled through the mountains and the river flowed steadily, the spirit of Tayanita would be felt, a reminder that freedom is precious, that courage is timeless, and that the sacrifices of one warrior can echo through generations. Though fate had been harsh, it could not erase the legacy of Tayanita. He had fought for what was right, protected those who could not protect themselves, and ensured that his people could continue to live with dignity and hope. His life, full of struggle, courage, and sacrifice, became a guiding light for the Apache people, a story of resilience, determination, and the enduring power of the human spirit. And so, Tayanita's journey came to an end, not as a tale of defeat, but as a testament to the true meaning of freedom. The land he loved remained in the care of his people. The traditions he cherished continued to thrive. And the lessons he had lived and taught, the importance of courage, sacrifice, and unity, would guide generations for years to come. His name became immortal, a symbol of the warrior who gave everything, faced fate with unwavering strength, and left behind a legacy that no force could ever erase.